Hello, this is Brian from Tavaran Games here with another update to Dungeon Maker. Now this update includes a big new feature, and that is the workshop integration on Steam. However, before we get into that, I want to talk about a couple of bug fixes that I did for some things that were introduced in the last update, as well as some other features I've added and changed. So the first bug occurred from the character resistances in the last update. Now, when we have duration spells, I was storing the duration data separately in the spell item, but when it was trying to calculate if the character that walked into it was immune or resistant to the damage, it was unfortunately trying to look for the held action by the character, not the duration spell item. So it was just a small glitch I introduced. I forgot to change a little bit of code, but that has since been fixed, and now you can see we are getting the damage correctly. What was happening from the previous update is the characters would actually get booted from the server when they walked into this spell because it thought it was cheating or something else, and the characters ended up gone. So that has been fixed, and the duration spells are now working correctly for the characters in the multiplayer. Now another thing, if we look over at the DM, a bug that was introduced recently as well, though I'm not sure exactly when, if you updated an enemy's health manually, what would happen is their health would just go to 0 and they would be marked as dead. So if you had an effect outside the character's actions that did them damage, they would just instantly die. And the only way to fix that would just be to reintroduce the enemy to the scene as the Dungeon Master. However, that has been fixed. Now, another thing is when you're controlling the NPCs as the Dungeon Master, they will now actually fall down as the players do. Now, I got rid of fall damage for anything for one level, basically 10 feet, because I just was thinking in my games, characters and enemies should be able to drop down 10 feet without hurting themselves. That's not very far. So the characters and NPCs will not take damage if they fall down 10 feet. This also fixed another issue where characters and enemies leaving stairs onto the lower level. So if they don't step onto the upper level, instead they dropped off here, would actually take fall damage because the game would register that as a drop because they didn't fall off the floor. It wasn't registering that they were on the stairs. So by getting rid of 10-foot fall distance or fall damage, that fixed that bug just fine. Now another multiplayer feature, if we go back to our character that I've changed, is I've added blood effects to the character. So let's drop his health below half, and you can see we have the below half blood damage. Bring it down really low, you can see we got more damage, really low, and that is now showing up. Now, originally I didn't integrate that because I wanted the players to be able to just to track their health themselves and to not have like a distracting red X making them think, oh, I am dead, my character's gone. However, I found my players would get confused, like they'd be trying to move around and going, wait, why can't I move? And then they'd finally, after a minute or two, look at their health and realize they were at 0 health. So I added in the blood markers to the players, so now they'll have a better visual indicator of what their health currently is. And the Dungeon Master and other players will be able to see it as well. Okay, so that's it for the multiplayer aspects. Now, another thing you'll notice, though, looking is some of the new items I've added. So I've added in nautical-themed items. So we have like a ship's anchor, we have chains, we have this lobster trap, mast, and then on the upper level, you can see we've got crow's nests and sails, as well as some ropes, crates, and then this ship's wheel. So those are some of the new items. Now let's exit this and we can check out some more of the items that I've added. So let's go just into a map blueprint because it'll load faster. Just one of the ones I already have. And let's go into the decorations. So I've added in this dragon skull into the decay items. In the furniture, I've added this storage tab where I put the barrels, treasure chests, the wardrobe, and that, as well as the new items, so these crates and some sacks you can use on your map. As well, if we go over into the tools and construction tab, that's where your rope and chain, fishing net are, scythe and sickle. So you've got these new items you can add into your games, some carrot crops, and that should give you a few new things to play around with. Okay, so back in the main menu, there was another glitch that I didn't realize existed, and this one was in from the start of the game. However, it was recently pointed out to me by one of my players. If we have an item here, actually let's go to something I don't care about, but if you have a character or an item or anything you want to rename in the main menu, if you hit the renamer, and then you were to hit without changing the name, hit confirm, it would actually delete that character file. It would, when it was trying to rename it, it would delete the, it would see, oh, there's a file of the same name, so I need to delete that to clean up. However, it would just delete the original file as a result. So I got rid of that. Now, if name changes work fine, but if you leave it the same, it doesn't delete the original file. So I did have a player accidentally kill their character sheet because they hit confirm instead of cancel without changing the name. Okie dokie. So another new feature I introduced, if you go down to the settings, you can now change the font to simplified font, which will change everything to Arial. This could make it more legible for players who have trouble reading the sort of fancy serify font I've used for the game. Or if you just prefer it, you might like the look better. So that way, more of an accessibility thing. And it will change pretty much all the fonts in the game. The only thing it doesn't change is the fonts on top of the dice images in the when you're playing in multiplayer. Those ones are actual image files, so the font doesn't change there. But any font that's being controlled by the game engine will be changed. So let's go back to our font and the previous menu. That leads us, of course, to the big new feature, the Steam Workshop. So it's actually integrated in the bottom left corner of your main menu screen. Well, all of these screens, it doesn't go away. But let's click on that, and you get brought to a new page titled Steam Workshop. Now, you can make workshop items in any of these categories. So your assets, that is the any changed images you have. I've done one for testing, so we're not going to look at that. But your blueprints, so any of those blueprints you've made will show up. Your campaigns, you can only upload one campaign at a time, just to keep things nice and simple. Now you can also do characters, and you can of course upload more of those, and enemies and NPCs. So let's make a new one of NPCs. So we'll just call this basic NPCs. You give it a description, so you need to give it a description and a name. So the name has to be at least 5 characters long, and the description, has to be at least 10 or 20 characters long. So let's actually type that correctly. Now you do not need to include a preview image. However, if you don't, the workshop item will just have the Steam default. So let's just scroll on down through all of these image files because I do have one for this, and that's it. And then let's select them all. We can just select all our files using that button. You can also deselect them all. You can select specific ones, but we're just going to select them all. Hit the upload button, and we'll be shown this uploading screen. And then once it's done, you'll get a big check mark, and you can close that. Now, if we actually go to the Steam Workshop in the Community Hub, so you can see the Workshop button here or the Community Hub. Let's click on that. It hasn't shown up yet because it has to be approved by Steam itself. So if we look, it is here. It's been uploaded, but it will be hidden until Steam reviews the content just to make sure it is safe. But it's there. Now, let's subscribe to that. And what we're going to have to do is we are going to have to restart the program. So let's close our Dungeon Makers. And you can see my updates in the background. And let's go back to our library and hit play. And when we do, after the title animation here, it's going to do an uploading workshop items. You can see that there, and it's really fast. It's just copying over the files. But if we look at our NPCs, you can see that we now have a second copy of each one with a new name. So what the program is doing when it's moving over the Steam Workshop files, it's also checking any names and going through and adding a number onto the files, or if it needs to make sure it doesn't accidentally overwrite any previously existing files that you have. So you can see for each of these NPC files, it did rename them. Now it will do that again as many times as it needs to, up to 100 before it gives up trying to move that file over. But I figure you probably won't get 100 of the same named file. Now, if you unsubscribe from the item, when you then reload, so let's go back to our Community Hub. Let's, click back, there we go. Let's unsubscribe from that, so we are no longer subscribed. Back to our library, so let's close that. Wait till this registers. Hit play again. Let's go. Okay. So it was just downloading the workshop, or the update. So then that loading still happens, and now it will have deleted all of the files associated with that workshop item. Not any of the files previously on your computer. So it tracks every file it copies over, and then when it needs to delete them, it only deletes those files. And it's tracking the renaming as well. Now, another fun thing, so let's actually subscribe. Let's close this, confirm. Let's actually go back here and go to the one that's actually been approved. So the village buildings. So let's subscribe to that. Now this one has maps that have NPCs in them. Now one fun thing that I have the program do, when you upload any maps, it will go through the map data. It actually finds all of the NPCs and enemies, and it uploads them as well. So if we go to our map blueprints, they're all there. So we have those, but you can see we have the, in the alchemist shop, we have an NPC, the alchemist. Oh, it copied that over as well. So when you're uploading a campaign or you're uploading a map blueprint, it will make sure the workshop item will include any of the NPCs and enemies needed for that campaign or for that blueprint. As well, it will go through, when it installs them, if it did change any names, it will go through all of the map files that are uploaded and change the name in those map files locally on the user's computer to make sure it's loading the correct one, so that it will be loading this Alchemist 1, the second copy of Alchemist 3, instead of this original copy. So that way, again, if you have things like enemies, D&D, there's common enemy names, the dragon names. You could have multiple campaigns you've downloaded from the workshop that all have the same named enemy. Well, this method makes sure that they're not using the exact same enemy file. They're using the enemy file intended to be with that map or campaign. Now, if you want to actually keep part of a workshop item but unsubscribe from it, so let's say in the blueprints, you like a few of the blueprints from it, but you don't like others. If you rename that file to anything else, then when you unsubscribe, it doesn't register the name change in the original files. So it won't delete the ones that you've changed the name for. So actually, if we close that, we're bouncing back and forth like crazy here. We will unsubscribe from that and open Dungeon Maker again, so it will resync all of our files. You should see that we will still have that one Alchemist file it installed from the workshop item, but it's gotten rid of all the others that were installed with it. So that way you can actually change the names of anything you want to keep, unsubscribe from it, and those files will still be saved to your computer for you to use. However, if you make changes to a workshop file, so you open it up, you make some changes to it, and then you go back, oh, it did install the NPC, of course, that was associated with it, so that NPC will not load correctly. You will have to change the NPC names associated with the maps as well. But if you were to make changes to the map, save it, and then delete the workshop item, it will delete the changed copy unless you change the name. So that is one thing you have to do for anything you make edits to, or just stay subscribed to the workshop item and it will stay installed. Now, another feature of the Steam Workshop integration is being able to edit your workshop items. So when you click the edit, you'll see any ones you've created. This list will just be blank if you haven't made anything yet. If we go to that basic NPCs one, we can see it's got the name and description that you gave it. Now, if you've made changes in the actual community hub over in the workshop, because you can edit it from here, and oh, that's been approved, you can edit the title and description here. Those changes will not be reflected in the workshop here, or your edit workshop here. This is information that's stored locally. So if you do want to change the description or the name, I recommend you do it from within Dungeon Maker. Because if you ever want to change the files, you'll then have to re-edit the description as well. But yeah, you can change the files you have included, so you can deselect any ones or add new files if you've made new enemies or NPCs you want to add to the package. The name description, you can change the image. And then when you hit upload here, it will then upload those changes to the workshop, which will then reflect to anyone who subscribed to it pretty quickly. It's been pretty instantaneous as far as I can tell. Now, if you've deleted the workshop item, which you can do from here, the actual Steam Workshop hub, you can hit delete and remove it. Now, it will still be locally saved. I haven't figured out a way to determine if that workshop item still exists, if you still control it, until you attempt to make edits. So if you've deleted that workshop item and then hit upload, it will, well, actually, let's do it. So we'll delete this item. And then if we try to upload this now, we will get an error that the workshop item no longer exists, and it will remove your local record of that item. So make sure, so if you do delete it, here, in order to delete it locally, you have to go through the editing process right now. Now, hopefully that's something I can figure out how to fix in the future, so only items that still actually exist on the workshop are shown here. However, for now it is working. It's just a little bit of a workaround I've had to do. Alright, well that's all the update I have for you this week. Hopefully the workshop functionality is working for everybody. Please let me know if there's any issues with it or any other bugs you find in the game. And as always, let me know of any other features or artwork or items you want added to the game, either in the comments here or in the Steam discussions. And as always, have a good one.